ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm going to do my best to introduce you. I'm going to butcher it, full disclosure, but I'm going to try anyway. Dr. Mario Torres-Leon. Did I do okay pronunciation wise?
Amazing.
It's very important. And it's funny. I've been trying to work on, the more I'm podcasting, I get to meet such amazing people from so many different backgrounds. And I'm really trying hard to get better at pronouncing names. So I appreciate you, bearing with me on it. But for everybody listening, Dr. Mario, you've got, well, gosh, you've got such an amazing background, and I've had so much fun ever since we connected on social media here in the recent past. But I've gotten to consume more of your content and dig into, a live partner and all of these things, and it's refreshing. And so I'm can't wait to pick your brain on it. But I just want to, tee it up a little bit. So for everybody listening, you are, I believe it's Harvard, Yale, and Columbia studied. 10 to 15 years as a physician, practicing physician.
Over 30.
30, thank
Yeah.
you. Gosh, yeah. And this incredibly robust background, and this resume that's a book long with all of the experiences that you've got. And I think it's so cool because I can already see some of those different perspectives coming through in the little bit that I've gotten to know you. But specifically, you've got a live partner, which is fascinating to me. And I've gotten to dig in on, just these ideas of high performing relationships and making the most of how important that stuff is. And so anyway, that's kind of to tee it up for the conversation today, and why I'm so excited to pick your brain. So I want to start with that and tell you thank you for being here and giving me some of your time, because I can't wait. And I feel like I don't know, I just feel like I've got a really unique opportunity to pick your brain a little bit. So I want to share how excited I am about it.
I feel extremely humbled and grateful for the invitation to be here with you today. It's kind of interesting. If the audience was watching what was happening before we actually started to this, they probably would have enjoyed that just as much, because there was
I was thinking we should
was
have been recording.
two guys having like sparkles all over the place and like fireworks going on in the room, talking about a bunch of different things that are really, really interesting. Thank you for the invitation and the generosity to be here with you.
Tell me, so where I want to start is a little bit of the background, because, it's been fun. I think even off camera, you described yourself as a serial entrepreneur.
Indeed.
And you also had an anecdote about how cool your knowledge has been. Like we were talking, for everybody listening, off camera, the context for us was an AI conversation. And
Yes.
you were sharing with me this anecdote of how powerful how hard you've worked and the experiences now combined with these things. And what I think is unique about your background and your story is that you could do just about anything, but you've chosen sort of this alive partner. I get the sense that it's a bit of a passion project, that like it means something to you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear the background on that. Can you talk to me about, how it came to life and, the why kind of behind a life partner?
That's a phenomenal question and a complicated one, because it's been a long journey. A life partner is definitely a passion of mine, and the birth of a life partner goes to the age of 12. I'm currently 50 years old, so this is essentially almost 4 decades old. It was really an interesting story where this neighbor of mine, who was a physician, living in the same neighborhood I grew up, he comes to my parents and he basically asked my parents if he and his wife could borrow me one evening. And I don't know exactly the extent of how that conversation went with my parents, but I do know that the product of that was my parents coming to me and said, hey, the neighbors are going to go and come and pick you up at 7:00, Thursday, whatever the day was, and they want to have a conversation with you because they think that you can actually help them out with something that they're dealing with. I was not the typical 12-year-old, and kind of like, people would refer to me the 40-year-old man in the body of the young one, right?
Yeah.
And that's typically how that was. So I was a little bit beyond my years growing up in terms of the emotional intelligence, let's say. That sounds really arrogant, but it's conventionally that's what that was like.
Yeah.
So they take me to the house, and just like you and I here in the studio, he and his wife are directly across from me, and they put a chair over here. So here I come to this chair, and after, the pleasantries, so how are you and this and that and how school is going and so on, the wife takes the microphone and she basically says, we've been dealing with some problems in our marriage, and we're having sexual problems, and we've been considering getting divorced and all those things. Now, for anybody watching this conversation, here you have a 12-year-old with a married couple that has 2 children at the time. Uh, Theoretically a successful couple, right? I mean, he
Right.
is a surgeon and they have this beautiful life and so on. And here I am on the receiving end of something that I didn't know what was coming my way. But what happened that day was actually fascinating because it was my first exposure to the aspect of being in the presence of a healing moment
Mm.
where a lot of the things that were being shared as I was processing them and giving feedback back to them as they were asking for it, it created this really incredible connection between the three of us. And over the course of time, the relationship improved and so on. And I was able to be on the receiving end of some topics that growing up I had not really been exposed. My parents were not the ones who were talking about having sexual problems, or even I didn't really even witness much up to that stage of my life problems with my parents.
Right.
But there was something about being able to understand that and connect with that. Fast forward a little bit more, I had just finished college and I happened to be a missionary in Tijuana, Mexico. This is going back to 1995. And as I am digging dirt and laying bricks and so on with the other missionaries, I had like this kind of like flashing moment, almost like the lightning bolt that hits you. And as I am doing all this manual work and so on, I recognize in that moment, within a matter of a couple of more weeks, this is the month of May of 1995. I started medical school in August of that year, late summer. So a few more weeks, beyond that, I was going to be starting medical school, and it hit me in that very moment. I said, wow, I'm going to have this incredible opportunity to learn all of these things and amass all of this knowledge to serve humanity in the capacity of a physician. How amazing would it be if I could actually take all that knowledge and go on TV and go on the radio and be able to have books and be able to disseminate this information to be able to touch more and more people.
So even before school, you were thinking beyond a physician.
Yes, I was, because what happened in that moment, it's almost like I had this, almost like an out-of-body experience where I detach out of like getting dirty and working with this, blocks and cement and so on. And almost like having this moment of looking at the place where I was at and having a completely different perspective of service.
Yeah. Wow. I love that.
Like what is possible with what you know?
Yeah.
What would it be possible, not only with what you know, but with the experiences that only a human being can have?
Right.
And how can that be taken to a point where I can touch more and more people? I already had the awareness before going to medical school that physicians could only see one person at a time.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot of leverage, despite the privilege of being able to serve one person and really create such impact that they can be dying, and now they're not dying. They have some cancer and they need surgery, and the surgery is done, and then they essentially heal and so on. I mean, that's really amazing when you can actually, if you think about what physicians do or people in the healing spaces. I know that you've had other people who are in the healing arts here in your program. It's really one of the highest callings and one of the highest privileges you can possibly have.
Yeah.
As I go through my medical school years, I've been very much vested in personal development and self-growth and so on. Every so often, I would have this flashback, especially in my relationship with women and dating and things not going right and so on and having arguments and so on. Every so often, I would have this flashback going back to being 12 years old again and seeing this couple and what they were going through. And you go through life and you have a bunch of things, and the busyness of life sometimes keeps you away from it. Let's go now to 2010 as I'm going through that whole journey. I start dating my now wife, who is also a physician, multiple times best-selling author and well-known in the mind-body medicine space. She is an ER physician who's actually left the world of the ER to actually have a global mind-body medicine practice and so on. And one of the things that became very evident to me during our marriage and the struggles that happen in relationships and the many things that I would endure in that process and experience in dealing with her would bring me back to that 12-year-old boy. And why do these things happen? why is it that if you can love somebody so deeply as a man, you still run into these issues where there is the sentiments of she's in one planet and I'm in another one, just like John Gray talks about, Mars and Venus,
Right.
right? Like, why is it that we experience those things? Why, if you have people, not just me, who have been well educated by however you want to define that, or who are, let's say, emotionally, pretty developed, why is it that we still experience those moments of
Those
disconnection
challenges.
and those
Yeah.
challenges? What is it? What is the foundation in that? Is it something genetic? Is it something that is gender influenced? And really going down those rabbit holes. By this time in my personal history, 2010, I've done a lot of personal development work. I have gone to workshops now with my wife, being a physician and being in the mind body medicine space. We're no stranger to danger and traveling to places and having the $80,000 retreat and like reading every book and listening to the podcast and being on stage with some of those people as we work together in a business that we had, which was called the Thrive Doctors, and really teaching people and running health masterminds and so on. So really haven't done a lot of different things. And I continue to simmer in that particular niche of my life, if you will, as I would be confronted with the things that come up and arise in relationship between a man and a woman. And I would still have not a lot of questions answered. And I would go to a lot of these experiences and perhaps along the lines of chasing the greatness of being a great husband, right? And a great communicator and a great human being and somebody who can really connect at such deep level, and still falling short.
Right. Because you didn't have the tools yet?
Didn't have the tools and didn't really have some of the awareness that I'm going to disclose and share with you for your community.
Yeah.
And one thing that has been super, super powerful in my life is the aspect of meditation. And that has accelerated a lot of things for me. And some years back, I took it a step further after the suggestion of one of my mentors, who said to me, Mario, have you ever done a silent meditation retreat? And of course, I had heard about those things and so on. I had never actually attended one. He said, have you heard about Vipassana? Vipassana is a meditation style that basically got developed, if you will, or pass on to humanity through the Buddha. It's not a religious thing. And I said to him, no, I don't know what that is. I've heard about it, but I'd be open to it. I said, I think you should do it. And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, because I can be coaching you in many of these things, and it would be like me taking just my finger and trying to scratch the wall.
Right.
Or you actually go into the experience and having a jackhammer.
Yeah.
In a matter of 10 days, your whole reality has been blown apart and you'll have a completely different life.
It was 10 days.
10 days. By the time it was done, it was almost 12 days.
Wow.
And in that kind of experience, maybe some of your audience members, they've gone to some of these experiences. Essentially, you go into this process of noble silence where you can't even make eye contact like we're doing it right now. You can't look at people. You're just looking down the ground. You're going to a meditation mat in the meditation hall, and you're basically there to do your thing. And you're basically in this process for 14 hours a day. My internship at Columbia, after having graduated from medical school, was nowhere near as hard. Doing something of this nature, I'll tell you that much. It was incredibly intense. And in full disclosure, right? So my ego was such that I'm like, I'm just going to prepare myself to go and crush it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm
Well,
just
of course.
It's like you're going to have, you're going to do the Boston Marathon. Okay. I'm just going to be, for 4 months, I'm going to be every day. I'm going to be waking up in the morning, my diet, this and that. And I'm just going to go there and boom. And I'm going to crush that marathon. I'm going to do great. Well, so I started to amp up my meditation time during that process to build myself up to 2-hour sessions of straight meditation without moving or anything at all.
On your own.
On my own.
Yeah.
And so I would wake up at 4:00 in the morning. I usually start my days anyways at 4:30 in the morning currently as we're having this conversation. That's my usual day. And I would wake up at 4 so that I could have my moment and then integrate myself with family life as everybody was waking up and so on. We have 2 kids, so they need daddy time too. And here I am going through my process. Some of those days were incredibly painful physically. Your mind is trying to really convince you of certain things and to be fidgety and to move and to so on, as opposed to really being completely centered in what's here for you. What is it that the body is actually trying to tell you? So I basically went through all these months in preparation for my Vipassana retreat, and I'm like, I'm a champ. I'm just going to go there, and I've got this. I'm going to do great. So here comes the first day, and first thing, I don't have all the props that you have in your meditation mat, so the environment is completely different. You have whatever you have there, right? So I grab whatever I could and sit down, and then the first day starts to go on, and I keep on telling myself, this is going to be nothing. It's going to be, 10. It's going to be easy.
I've trained.
I've trained. I'm great. And then sometime, maybe the third or fourth hour into the meditation practice of that day, my back starts to speak. And it's like all these cramps start to happen, and then the neck, and then I'm not a heavy set person, so there's not a whole lot of meat between my butt skin and my pelvis, right? It's like, and suddenly I can feel it, so you're kind of like trying to find your place and so on, and it's like, man, this is not the way it was at home. So, and that was day one, right? And there's still like 10 more hours to go.
Right.
And this is in the first day.
And 14 and 10 more days. 9 more days.
And 10 more days to go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be really something. It became a really deep struggle in so many regards. You start to really discover that you can't be with yourself that much, that your mind rather be elsewhere.
Yep.
It became an incredible experience. And as I am muscling my way mentally,
right,
to go through that, just like a endurance runner, or anybody who's a high level elite athlete, you're talking to yourself along the way.
Yep.
But the thing is that there's really not a whole lot of movement here, right? So it's not like lactic acidosis in your legs and you're trying to, well, I'll drink a little water and electrolytes and I'll go through. No, it's like, this is a much deeper experience. Make the story short, something became really evident towards the end of that experience. I was looking for the come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, the aha
moment. When is the sky going to open for me and suddenly I'm going to be this enlightened being, right? And I must confess, so the whole experience comes to an end. Noble silence, which is that period that you can be looking at people and so on, comes to an end. And I am rather disappointed, Yeah,
because it wasn't like profound.
No, at that point, I had not really experienced that. The high achiever in me, it's kind of like asking myself now from day 7 up to that point, would I ever do this again? Would I ever do this again? And I'd be like, I think I'm good with what I did. I don't think I have to do this again. And then something amazing happened. So as I am walking down to my bedroom, this gentleman comes to me and introduces himself, says his name, and says, Mario, I want to thank you. And I'm completely confused at this point. I haven't been looking at people, so I don't even know who this guy is, right? He said, I've been the guy to your right the whole time in the meditation hall, and I just want to thank you. And I'm just like listening. So he said, I want to thank you for being such an amazing meditation partner and holding so much space for me.
Wow.
Right? I'm completely confused at that point. I don't know what to do with that. So I proceeded to say, thank you so much. Wow, that's incredible. And then I excused myself and I continued to walk down the hall to go to my bedroom. And as I enter my bedroom in that moment, I start to feel this unbelievable cloud of almost like a depression state, like this sadness that just overcame me in a way that I had never experienced that just some years back. And I'm like, I got to go outside right now and just like feel this. And like, I don't even know what this is, complete confusion. So I walk out the building and I'm going to this courtyard area. There's some beautiful trees and so on. This was the month of September of that year in Massachusetts where I did it. And as I am walking out there, my eyes start to really just fill with tears. And this sense of overwhelm, sadness, all these feelings at once that were as intense as anything I had ever experienced in my life as an adult or even as a child. And I said to myself, oh my God, I got to find like the closest tree and get under the tree right now and just be with all of this and just cry and whatever is here and be with it. So that went on for over an hour and a half. a lot of different images came into my awareness and so on that I had never even seen before, had the experience of having that or the awareness that those things were there. And then after I came to a place that I felt, more calm and so on, I said, okay, let me just go inside, wash my face and so on. I lay down, regroup, and, let me lay down for a couple of minutes and just kind of like be with whatever happened here. Like, what was this all about? I do that. I lay down, and then other images come in, and I start bawling again. And at that point I said, okay, this is not over, right? I got to go to the meditation hall immediately at that point. And there was nobody in the meditation hall. There was maybe one or two people there that were leaving as I was actually coming in. And I'm like, thank you, Lord, because, I'll be able to be by myself and have this experience. Almost like the embarrassment and the shame of like crying and all of these things coming up for me. And I sit down and it's just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And just all of these feelings, all of these emotions, a lot more images just coming to my awareness. And in that very moment, Ben, I had an understanding of why I had been there, but it was not from here.
From your heart, your soul?
It was a full body experience. It's heart, is soul, is your body way beyond your physical body.
Like almost intuitive?
Beyond that.
Wow.
It was a state where a lot of information was coming in. Tremendous amount of information. It's one of those things that the words fall short to describe what the physical body was actually experiencing. And at that point, I had a sense of completion, to the point that if you were to ask me, Mario, would you do it again? In fact, I'm going in May. I'm going to do another one.
Yeah,
it's been a couple of years because I've been so busy with so many other things. Connecting the dots with a life partner, your first question in this gathering, something became very evident to me that continued to be reaffirmed and continued to be given to me through my meditation practice and really tuning in and reflecting in all the things that I had done for over the past 30 years in my life and so on. And is the fact that since the age of the Enlightenment, going now back to the 19th century, we have been revering the brain. You're such a genius. We're living from here up.
Right.
The IQ of that person is off the chart.
Right.
He is or she is so brilliant. So we have been revering all of this intelligence that is centered in the brain.
Right.
And one of my meditations that solidified a lot of those experiences of what was happening, going back to being 12 years old, medical school, and dealing with life and death on a regular basis, my meditation and spiritual experiences and practices and so on. And then, going into that space of meditating on a regular basis, one day, some years back, I get this, let's call it a download, let's call it an awareness, the proverbial somebody speaking in your ear moment, where I realize that we have not been incorporating the body experience, the feelings experience, into informing the brain of a much bigger picture. And I'm going to deep dive into that. So, and I'm going to make this claim. I don't say that I invented this, that I'm the creator of it, because I find that to be extremely arrogant from an awareness perspective. A lot of the things that we create as human beings, in my estimation, come from you opening to other possibilities, and suddenly we have the proverbial flashes of genius that come in, the sparks,
it all
and so
comes
on.
Together. Yeah,
it all comes together. So I don't claim that I'm the inventor of anything, but rather you become a channel, you become a conduit, the recipient of some awareness that came into your life. I've completely changed my relationship to knowledge and experiences because of that awareness. And I live by that on a daily basis, and everything I do in my businesses, they have to do with that. But what became evident to me is that if I ask you, and maybe you have the awareness, maybe not, Ben, when you feel angry, do you know where in your body that tends to actually go to? For me, I know exactly where it is, and it's always here, right over the left aspect of my chest, and it feels as though somebody's taking a clamp and digging into my chest.
Right.
When the intensity of that anger is very strong. Sometimes it radiates up to the left aspect of my neck and may actually take part of my shoulder. That's kind of like an extreme moment of anger. The more I really tune into this awareness that was coming in, or this message that was coming in, I started to become really curious from the left brain and this more scientific side of me, the doctor in me, the skeptic in me. Is like, does that hold true every single time?
Right. So, yeah, so you got a little scientific about it?
Yes. So I wanted to have proof, right? Not just trust the realm of the spiritual and that which is so woo-woo or weird for so many people, even though it's been a big part of my life.
Real, yeah.
And it's very real. And no question about that. But if I was really being exposed to something that I had never seen before, I was curious, is this just something that is Mario?
Right.
Or is,
yeah.
Or is this something that
is it common?
Or is it common? Is it universal for human beings?
A shared experience, yeah.
100%. The more that I started to really dig into that and probe into that, and as I would be coaching people in the healing space and the mind-body medicine space, I would tune more and more into probing into these things and asking about them. What I found consistently is that people have no awareness of where their feelings and emotions reside in their body, nor do they have awareness that these patterns are unique to you as much as your fingerprints are.
Wow.
That became a huge game changer. Like, honestly, as we're recording this in 2025, an evolutionary moment in my personal life and in my professional life as a physician who had gone to, as you said, Harvard, Yale, and Columbia universities. We hear all the time about the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, in my experience as a physician, in the allopathic world, there's really no room still, as we're recording this, to have this conversation. Where do you put it in?
From an academic perspective?
From a practical perspective.
Yeah.
See, even in academia, if it had already permeated and this was really widespread knowledge, we would be teaching this to medical students and other healthcare, professionals. I call them healthcare reminders,
right?
Stemming from the knowledge and the belief that self-healing is an inner thing,
right?
And we activate that. And I can go down that rabbit hole with you with my cancer patients and the operations I've done. But the point is, this became a remarkable discovery. And the more I talk about it, the more I continue to realize, even as we're having this gathering here, that it's like weird for people to understand that. And let me actually be even more granular about this. And I've actually brought a tool that I want to share with the audience. So as part of the evolution of that download and how I visualized that message, I said, well, this is more or less how I would be seeing it in my meditations. And so just to show for the audience, this is kind of like the female version of the soul map. And I'll explain what that means in a second. And this one, the male version. So let's stick to this for a second. The word soul map comes from, soma is actually body in Greek.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of like the body map.
Yeah.
And I use it in the context of emotions and feelings. So what I teach people in my community is, now that you have this tool, I want you to tune in. Let's say that if we're talking about anger, right? When you experience anger, where do you feel it? And not only where do you feel it, but I want you to describe for me, what is it that you feel?
How it feels? Yeah.
Yes. Because for you, anger may be cold. For you, anger may be needles. Okay? It could be pressure.
And it's different for every person.
Correct.
Okay.
If I were
as unique as our fingerprints, as you say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's say that I were to take 100 people in a room and I were to say the word anger. We've been talking about anger. There is a high likelihood that, let's say, 10 people will experience anger in the same anatomical part. When we ask them, what does it feel for that particular person, those 10 people, chances are that they will have a completely different experience of the sensation.
Wow. Even though if it's in the same region.
Exactly.
And what? Well, sorry, finish your thought.
So what is really amazing is that while there may be some particular emotional patterns that may have similar anatomical locations for a subset of people, the quality will be different amongst those people that are experiencing in the same anatomical location. And then you have the rest of the universe. Now, the next meta level of that experience is that it's always going to the same place in your body.
Fascinating. And that's what I was going to ask is explain for me then the importance of the awareness of that. So, step one, recognizing how your emotions feel in your body, which I just got to mention very quick anecdote, but that the mind body connection piece of it, I love. I use that all the time when I'm running. That I say, they are literally connected. You can't work on one without working on the other. And so I love it. I'm a huge subscriber to that. So I'm fascinated for, assuming like the practice of it, that we identify how and where the emotions present themselves physically, right? Step one, why does that matter? What's the importance of being in tune with that?
That's a great question, because there's no way, there's a couple of answers to that. Number one, there's no way that your brain can fully be optimized and be working from a place of greatness and magnificence if you're depriving the brain.
Because you're only getting half the story.
Not even half.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
look at the surface area of the head.
Right.
Even though you have the encephalic mass inside the skull, but if you actually were to measure surface area alone, plus all the volume of nerve endings that go beyond the skin, the question is, how much information are you actually neglecting?
Right.
Actively or passively?
Right.
Or both, by not being able to recognize what's actually happening in your body.
Because the idea would be that our body's telling us something. There's a message we're not receiving.
100%.
Got it.
There's no awareness of the message.
Right.
So one of the things that happens that is a very concrete example is that there are emotional experiences that when they're being blocked unconsciously, that energy is going to actually create disease somewhere in your body.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to give you an example for the audience. A part of my life was spent doing a lot of what's called minimally invasive surgeries as an interventional radiologist, which is one of my subspecialties. My specialty, my main one is radiology, and I dual subspecialize in interventional radiology, which is a surgical limb of radiology, and the other part is abdominal imaging. So pretty much everything below the diaphragm all the way down. I put all sorts of instruments in a lot of parts of the body that I'm not going to mention. I've done a lot of things to the body, especially during my Harvard years, doing experimental stuff for the sake of saving people's lives.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say that we have, two people, right? And we're going to call them, A and B here, right? And as we see in this example, so the two pages are identical in terms of their color, their fonts, this and that, and we have A and B, but everything else is the same. What I'm trying to say is I had patients that had the same diagnosis, roughly comparable in age, same staging in their cancer, okay? And I would do the same operation to those two people, the same thing. I would give them the same intravascular chemotherapy, so getting into the blood vessels and going to the liver and delivering the drug there just to be able to kill the cancer cells, and I would do exactly the same thing to two people.
But different outcomes.
B died in 3 months. A, 3.5 years. By the way, the numbers are actually accurate in those two individuals. They had metastatic colon cancer. Okay. I can go on and on and on with some stories. I'll give another one for the female audience. One of the biggest things that we deal with, internationally, globally, is with infertility. So a lot of women are trying to get pregnant. They can't get pregnant and so on. They've had all sorts of studies and so on. When I was doing a lot of work for the Infertility Center and the in vitro fertilization center at Harvard, these women would come to me and my team to actually have what's called a hysterosalpingogram, which is a really fancy word to say we're going to look at the uterus in the inside. We're going to put some dye so that in real time we can actually see with x-rays the anatomy and to make sure that the fallopian tubes, which are the conduits through which the eggs come in to be fertilized by sperm in the either in the fallopian tubes or in the uterus, that everything is open. Because if you have some sort of blockage, well, there's no connection between the egg and the sperm, right? I can tell you when I started to do some of this work that I started to do prior to a life partner, in my awareness in my career as a physician, how when I would see images real time, that things would be clamped down and it seemed as though the anatomy was actually blocked, flawed. I would stop the procedure and I would keep one nurse in the room and I would ask the rest of the team to step out while I actually had a conversation in the middle of the procedure with the patient. And I would start to ask what was going on in their lives. And I would just say that, like, how are you doing? And that, the moments of doing that and who I was being in that moment and connecting with the individual as I was telling, this is what I'm seeing in the screen. I think you're fine, but I need to understand what's going on.
Right.
That would open up this conversation about other things that were happening in the person's life that are not registered.
Right.
In the conventional model, in the history taking. It's just not there.
Right.
And the moment that we would go into those places to really deal and address the emotional pain or other things that were happening, embarrassment, shame that come with I can't get pregnant, and a bunch of other things, massive release of energy, crying in the room, and all of those things, then we get to a point I said, you know what? Do you mind if I just try doing the procedure again? Because I think that we're going to see a very different picture.
Wow.
You can't make these things up,
no,
right? Because you have a real-time image and a team of people witnessing what's going on. And suddenly the contrast, the material to be able to see the anatomy, which was seemingly blocked, now suddenly everything was just wide open.
Wow.
And spilling the contrast into the abdomen the way it should be.
The idea being then because they were open to healing?
It's a great question. I would say there's part of that, but there was an unrecognized
signals
and situations happening in the feeling body that would be promoting or creating this physiological, this chemical state in the body that would lead to the smooth muscle in those parts of the body, just like a biceps or a tongue, to contract and not allow things. It's almost like the body saying, I am not going to allow life to go through me.
Right.
I mean, getting pregnant it implies that you're going to bring life to the world.
Right.
Something inside of you does not want to contribute to that because there's other things that are asking to be catered to, unbeknownst necessarily to the person, that those things really have an impact.
Wow.
And I can go on with more and more stories like that I have witnessed in my life. So going back to your question about this connection, most human beings, and I am super convinced about this because I've seen it with thousands of people, have no awareness of the disconnection between the feeling body and the mind. I'll give you a little, even more. So recently, I was running one of my programs in my community, which is called the 28-Day Gratitude Launch.
Yes, I'm familiar with it. I can't wait to talk about this.
It's unbelievable.
Gratitude is, just so you know, quick anecdote. I make our team every Monday morning. We do a gratitude roundtable.
Wow.
Because it sets the tone for the week in such a powerful way. And all we do is talk about something that we're grateful for. That's how we end our all hands meeting every Monday, because it sets the tone for the whole week. So I love it. I had on my notes to ask you about this 28-day gratitude.
I'm going to extend a very humble invitation for your consideration. I don't believe in forcing anything upon anything in the universe, of considering having your team, not as a promotional sort of thing. I'd be glad to gift it to your team for the sake of kind of like running a beta test in the business world and what you do. Because what has happened in people that have gone through multiple cycles of GL28, is changed businesses. It has changed relationships. It has healed people. When I say heal people, we're not talking like, oh, I feel off today, now I feel amazing. No.
Literally.
I've been struggling with arthritis for 20 years, and I have not been able to move my hand and my wrist for the past 5. And after 2 weeks of doing these practices, I have full or near full range of motion and no pain. And the testimonials for those people that can go to my page, and I know that you've been following some of the information and seeing the experiences. You can't make these things up,
Yeah.
man. And it's really one of the most remarkable things that I've been able to witness. It's a privilege. It humbles me every single time. The funny thing is, I have come to a phrase that I have coined inside of my community, which I'll share with your audience. And I really stand behind this, and is gratitude plus feeling equals healing. Now,
gratitude plus feeling equals healing.
yes, and I want to let me be really specific, because when people hear the word healing, it can be a little off-putting for some. I've actually had that feedback too, because they tend to think like, well, I'm not sick. And this is where language, as you know, sometimes or very often falls short from really what's possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh, if I had $1 for every time I wish I had a better word for something.
Right. It's definitely one of those limiting, conditions of being human. But the way and the context in which I use the word healing goes far beyond that. Let's say that you were to tell me, I'm having a situation in my business where we have so many clients that are coming and we want to grow the business, and I really can't find people that can come and really work at the level of excellence and magnificence that I want to be operating and serve my customers. Well, if you ask me, there's healing to be done in your business.
Right.
Because you have the awareness that there's a shortcoming in what your dreams, goals, desires, and aspirations as a business, as an entrepreneur are, that are not being satisfied to the extent that you want to be operating at that level of excellence, right? Well, what I have found is that that's a form of healing.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody is having difficulties in their marriage, and for us men, we cannot connect at that level, and the woman is on one planet and the man is in the other planet, well, that disconnection, you can think of it as we need to be more harmonious, we need to work on our relationship. The word healing also refers to that. There's something that is not really syncing, is not fully aligned. So I really use the word healing in that context, not
Right.
just people that have a physical illness.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I just love that concept of healing, like beyond even our, there's so many complexities in like everything that comes into whether it's our business or our relationships or, our life, our physical, mental, whatever. So I love that idea that healing is bigger than that. So that helps.
Much, much bigger. So gratitude plus feeling equals healing. And we've been talking about, how I use the aspect of healing in this context. And I want to make a brief parenthesis, because I haven't really answered a question that you asked me about how do we ended up in this whole thing of the communication and my journey and so on. And I'll tie it in again back to GL28 and gratitude. So what became very evident, I was sharing about this experience with my wife and relationships and so on, is if we think about men and we think about the evolution of humanity, and I know that you're a reader and you like to seek, the knowledge and so on. Therefore, the title of your podcast, Chasing Greatness. If we were to take a historic journey for a second, and let's say that we rewound time 300,000 years ago, which is, by best of estimates, what it is said that Homo sapiens has been around. Perhaps the biggest moment of emotional connection between men would have been that I had a big animal chasing my butt.
Yeah.
And suddenly you popped out of somewhere, right? And you killed the thing. And
we high-fived.
And we're high-fiving, and we're like, oh my gosh, man, yes, we get to live another day. We made some weird noises, we would imagine. And now we have food to bring to the tribe, and everybody's super excited because we made it happen. Right?
That's peak male emotional experience.
100,000%. That's like, we had that. We may not see that happening in probably the next 1,000 years, right? Meanwhile, in the same setting, if we can imagine this, the women were in the village, wherever they were living in, as we're moving around and grazing and whatever, taking care of one another. Death, children being born, illness being addressed, as we were just hunting and gathering to
Right.
take care of them.
Right.
That circle, from an evolutionary standpoint, afforded those beings to have a different degree of connection that us as men did not have.
Sure. Makes sense.
And that allowed that circle to create such a degree of bonding, of sharing, of witnessing the human experience in ways that you and I in the field were not
Didn't
exposed.
get. Yeah.
We did not get them. Now, fast forward 300,000 years. Well, last time I checked, I haven't had a bear or a lion chase me
Right.
or have to be engaging nature in such a way to make a living. And you haven't either. But the fact of the matter is, there has also been an emotional and intellectual evolution that has taken place in those 300,000 years.
Mm.
The needs of women, in many regards, from those corners of their world, have also evolved. And there has always been a lag. As much as men have been changing and evolving emotionally relative to where the women have been. In my estimation,
Meaning that we're evolving more slowly, or that we're just catching that the evolution's happening at a different pace, or that the gap's staying the same.
I think that there has been a different kind of pace to it, and there is still a gap.
Yeah. Okay.
Who can quantify the gap? I think it's not as relevant as the recognition of
That
the
there
fact.
is one.
Precisely.
Right.
That's exactly right. So if I cannot meet myself with what's coming up for me now, how could I possibly meet her?
Right. Of course.
It's not possible. And the more that I thought about that, it's like, okay, how do we actually then deal with that? How do as men, if you consider yourself an alpha guy, I consider myself an alpha guy, go-getter, I'm, a business guy, how do I actually deal with that? I'm not somebody who lives in an ashram who is actually meditating 24 hours a day. I have definitely my male side. I definitely have my feminine side to myself, but I operate in the male essence of who I am.
Right.
So how do I get that? Otherwise, the more you spend time with a woman and you're going beyond the courtship and getting her to actually establish yourself as a couple and so on, then you go into a whole different set of dynamics of life that is not just dating. Life now evolves into
All the complexities.
All the complexities. But I don't have the tools to be able to connect at that level. Meanwhile, that woman is expecting, whether she's verbalizing that or not, that I am going to show up to play at such level to be able to have that degree of connection.
Right. Right.
So an interesting aside that is part of that is that in the personal development industry or the spiritual development industry, and there is, billions of people in that path, right? It's a multi-billion dollar industry. There is this tendency for women to be predominantly more of the seeking type in that line of things than men are, right? If I were to have 100 men here in the room and were to survey them to see who's going to go to the next, spiritual retreat, or who's going to go to the next, silent retreat, or who's going to do the whatever, the guys are going to kind of look at each other like, I don't think we're in the right room here.
Right.
And there may be 2 or 3 of them that will say, oh yeah, I'm going actually to one of those things, So, but if you had 100 women and you were to do the same survey,
they'd be more willing.
You probably would have more than 50% of them saying yes to that.
And the idea being that that's evolutionary. Like maybe it's a protection mechanism or whatever. There's a lot of reasons maybe why, but the idea that we haven't caught up to the modern needs now, modern emotional connection needs.
Yes.
Right.
And it continues to be an issue. If we take, the United States from where we're having this conversation, the statistics are pretty dismal for people to actually be able to succeed in their marriages within their first 5 years. There is more than 75 to 90% divorce rate. And a lot of the things, there is such a disconnect in the way that we communicate. That was very evident to me.
So yeah, communication.
And the full circle that this comes in with gratitude plus feeling equaling healing is the fact that the soul map has allowed, in my experience, for a lot of men in my community to start discovering sensations and feelings that have been running us forever.
Although we weren't letting ourselves be aware of them.
I would not say that it's not that we were not allowing ourselves, because that would actually imply a conscious effort to block the awareness.
Right.
We just
weren't aware.
We just simply didn't have the awareness.
Yeah.
Right. And this has allowed to open a small door to start to understand, because any man can understand what joy is, or being excited, going to a baseball game, basketball game, this and that, or being angry, getting into a fight or whatever, watching boxing or hockey or whatever. There's certain very specific emotions that as men we can identify with. We can say, yeah, I know what that feels like. And they say feel like, which actually triggered a memory here for me. This is really, really like next level. You're going to love this.
I am eating this up, just so you know.
This is how we speak. Most people, I'm going to say 99% plus of people in the world, if you ask them or you hear them when they're talking about what they feel, they say, I feel like, and then they fill up the blank with whatever that word is. I feel like I'm angry, let's say, right? What I have discovered is that what puts you in a state of empowerment and tapping into your greatness, your emotional greatness, without having to chase it anymore, is when you go, I feel.
And you own it.
And you say what the feeling is.
Yeah.
Right? The owning part comes later as you're starting to tune in into what is it that you're discovering that emotion is and where in your body is residing. You were asking me, Mario, but what is the value of knowing where it is? Imagine that you're going to a business meeting and you don't know who the people are. Perhaps you're going to be pitching a pretty significant project to support this company to have tremendous success, whatever, and with the services that you provide. You parked your car right in front of the building that you're going into, and you had a pretty good drive. You were doing great. Coffee or water, you got the music. Everything's going great. Beautiful day, fantastic. And as you're going up the stairs, suddenly...
nerves, anxiety, who knows?
Let's just use the word nerves, and, let's assign that to anxiety. And suddenly, because you've been actually practicing, what is it that I feel? Where is it in my body? And now you're starting to, the first thing that happens, your brain is like, I'm anxious. No, you may feel discomfort somewhere in your body. You may feel butterflies in your stomach, whatever the case may be for you. And you become aware physically of this sensation, but you have been practicing already and tuning in to where are these things in your soul map. And you say to yourself, okay, I'm having this sensation in this. And by the way, it may seem like we're just having this long conversation. It's instantaneous, Ben.
Right.
I'm having this butterflies in my stomach, this and that. Therefore, this must be, I'm anxious. No, you just you're going up the stairs. Boom, boom, I'm anxious. I wonder what's happening in the room, or who am I going to meet, or what is it that is going to happen there that is triggering this for me. This may seem out there, but it happens every single time. And the more than people tune in, it's just incredible. You start to have this awareness that goes beyond your physical experience. But it's physical, right? Because that's really what's informing you.
Yeah.
And you already are alerted before you walk into the boardroom to do your presentation that there may be something here that is already triggering you in ways that you don't know why, but they're there.
Elaborate on the beyond the physical experience for me. Are you saying that what you're experiencing is spiritual, mental? Define beyond the physical experience for me.
That the best way to answer that would be, are they divisible?
Fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all one.
Right. Ooh.
So.
Because it's connected.
It's all connected. And when you start to really not understand, to feel into, to accept the fact that these things are not disconnected as we have made them seem.
So you experience it holistically.
You do. You experience everything. It's no different than you going into a place and saying, I just got a bad vibe.
Mm.
What is a bad
Yeah,
vibe?
yeah. How fascinating. Speaking of lack of proper words for things, but we use like the vibes were off. Energy was weird. We do sense it. I
Exactly.
think we struggle to articulate it,
Yes.
but everybody has experienced those things of like, it felt right, or you just intrinsic. I today had an interview with somebody. I'm like, they are a part of the team. We just sensed it, like you can, this, oh gosh, there's got to be a better way to describe that, because it happens both positive and negative, and sometimes even like, I think another word we use for it would be red flags.
Yeah.
I got red flags from that one. Something's off.
Well, I have two words for you for your consideration. One is resonance. When there's resonance, it means that at an electromagnetic level, an atomic level, the particles they're properly balanced.
Resonance.
Resonance. The other one is alignment, right? As an entrepreneur, and you understand running your organization that when, for example, the values of a founder are not represented
Mm-hmm.
in the team.
It's wild. And sometimes, and you'll make a change. Like recently I've, let people go, or, made some fundamental change. I've even fired clients or whatever. And then there's resonance.
Yes.
It's fat. And it is so real.
Yes.
It's so real. The whole energy is different. People's work environments are different. Productivity, work enjoyment, quality. I mean, everything changes.
That's called alignment.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And when there is alignment, another visual to understand this from the brain is if you take an electrical wire and we were to sever the grounding coating, right, the shielding, and you were to go as far as severing partially or completely some of the little cables that are running within the larger cable, and you were to measure the conduction velocity, how quickly a current goes from the beginning to where you're receiving it and evaluating it versus a cable that hasn't been cut, you're going to see that this faster of the two is going to be the one that is untouched.
Yeah.
In organizations, which is no different, what is an organization? Is a body.
Right.
It's the body of the company. It's the body of this operation, this group of people coming together. Just like there's a liver, there's a heart. Well, there could be somebody in marketing. There could be somebody who is the operations person. There's somebody that could be the communications person. Those are organs within the larger body.
Mm-hmm.
When there's disharmony or there's illness requiring healing in one of those parts, then all of the things and the speed that you're speaking to is not experienced at a high level.
Right.
Right. It takes away performance.
Yeah. It's so real.
It is real.
Fascinating.
And you instead of going towards greatness, the gravitational pull is in the opposite direction.
And what I've sensed is interesting, and I'm fascinated your perspective on it as it relates to marriages or relationships, or even like our relationship with ourselves.
Yes.
But what I found is that when something's broken, that wire's cut, for example, and we're in misalignment, it happens slowly. And before you know it, it's like, it's not one big moment and all of a sudden things are different. It's like gradual, tiny little changes that happen over the span of a year, 6, long time horizons. But then you start to be like, man, something's off here. And I experience it all the time as the founder, speaking of, the organization being aligned with the values and things like that. But what I've found is fascinating, and it's probably applicable in my personal relationships too, and my relationship with myself, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. The misalignment happens slowly. The impact of the misalignment gets felt slowly. But once it's realigned, you can feel it almost instantly. It's like, it's like a breath, a deep breath, a breath of fresh air. But you don't get to experience it until the change occurs and you get back, to alignment. And I've experienced that recently organizationally. And I'm curious your perspective on that as it relates to relationships and, specifically like marriages and things like that?
That's a great question. I'll start the answer with two different scenarios. One time, I had a woman that came to have some mammograms, and one of my techs called me and said, "Doctor, you have to go into the exam room because this is pretty bad." And when I go to see this woman, I think she was about, early 70s or something like that. And so she opens her gown, and the right breast had the shape that it had. And then the left breast was this, what we call a fungating mass. Fungi is kind of like a mushroom-like, so it's kind of like really, this thing was just horrible. When you see something like that, you know that this has been going on for a long time.
Right.
And I asked the woman, when did you notice this? And she goes, about 3 weeks ago. That's fascinating to me, because it's no different than the other example, which is the death of the frog in the boiling water.
Yes.
Right? If you drop the frog in boiling water, the frog is going to jump out. It's going to survive because it can't stand it. But if you actually have a frog in the water and you just slowly raising the temperature, it will accept its death because it didn't notice until it was too late.
Right.
Right? So how does that translate to relationships? If you're not having the awareness, the organization could be drifting for a long time, and the organization could be a business, could be a relationship, could be a marriage. And there's this erosive atmosphere, situations that are essentially excavating the essence of the goodness that exists in that particular relationship.
Right.
Whether it's a business, relationship between friends, man and a woman, whatever the case may be. When you start accessing the power of your feeling body, you start to really have awarenesses that go beyond what you've ever experienced in your life. And the challenging part is that once it becomes conscious to you that these sensations are residing in your body, and now you're starting to feel them, locate them, to understand them, it is impossible to disregard them.
Right.
Because
you have to do something.
100,000%.
Which is a blessing and a curse.
It's a blessing and a blessing and a blessing and a blessing.
Only a blessing. Yeah.
At prima facie, meaning, at first glance, I can understand completely what you're saying when you come like, yeah, this could be a
now you're
curse.
Obligated to make it, but
it's kind of like, the freezer that is not working, and
ignorance is bliss
until it's not anymore, right? And then you have to do something about it. But the thing is, that's where greatness resides.
Yeah.
Truly. I'll give you another example that is very graphic because it really speaks to this. Imagine that it's 2:00 in the morning and the smoke alarm in your living room goes off, right? Dang, it's 2:00 in the morning, right? These things go off every so often, this and that.
I'll ignore it.
So you wake up, because now it's come to a point that I can't sleep, and now you're being compromised in other areas of your life. So I'm going to get up, and instead of going around and checking your house to see if in fact there is a true fire.
Mute it.
No, even worse. You take the battery off and put the battery on the side, and you put it back on the ceiling again. And I'm going to go and sleep now. This is what we have been doing in healthcare for the longest time. This is what we have been doing in emotional healthcare. This is what we've been doing in our spiritual healthcare. We are having this alarm. I call the body the most sophisticated form of any radar known to mankind until some form from any other galaxy comes and shows us otherwise. This is the most sophisticated thing we know. The complexity is still hasn't been fully understood and sorted out.
Right.
Especially,
oh gosh, not even close.
So we are receiving all this information, but I am choosing to take the batteries off, and I can take the batteries off by giving opioids to it, just
ignoring it,
repressing it, suppressing it, depressing it, all of the above. Because we have been revering the brain.
So we have to allow ourselves to feel it fully.
So that's a great question. Some years back, as I have been in this journey, I had a really dramatic awareness that came through for me. And it was the following. And I kept on contemplating in my meditations, what is the purpose of life? And I'm not here to tell anybody how to do their lives and live their lives, but I'll share with you what came from me. And is the purpose of life is to feel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. I love it.
The purpose of life is to feel, but to feel everything.
All of it. Oh, it's one of my favorite things. So I run ultras, and one of my favorite things about ultras, it's hard for me to explain it, but I think that a lot of times in our lives, we put artificial parameters around the things we allow ourselves to feel. Protection mechanisms, setting goals smaller so we're not set up for failure or whatever, right? But like, we've got this spectrum of emotions and we kind of like box ourselves in so that the highs can only be so high and the lows can only feel so low. One of the things I love about the rawness of ultra running, especially like the really big distances, is that there are no barriers to that experience. And the highs are so high and the lows are so low, and it is raw and real, and you have to feel all of it. And it's been one of the most profound takeaways from those for me that I get to apply to my life, that I think because one of my, part of the whole chasing greatness idea is to set us up to live rich lives. And you nailed it. And I love that you've given me some of the words to use for it, is that to feel it. That's a rich life, is like all of it, the good, the bad. And, I think sometimes we have these tendencies of like muting it, sometimes to protect ourselves, but also sometimes I think because we don't want to set ourselves up to feel the highs also, but man, when we can remove those barriers and feel it, all of it, that's beautiful.
Well,
and painful and, but all of it, it's just so, it's rich.
It merits the question, what is pain? Because my experience as a physician has demonstrated for me, or to me, that even that has a wide spectrum in the human range of how it's experienced.
Yeah.
Right? People talk about tolerance and all of that. There is an element of life preservation in pain to bring our attention to areas that require attention for whatever reason.
Right.
But in terms of our development and experiencing greatness in our lives, we must be willing to decondition ourselves from the aspect that pain is something that is here to hurt us, because it could be the most powerful tool that your body is gifting you to open the door for you to truly have magnificence, breakthroughs, and milestones, and be able to have truly miracles in your life, things that your brain cannot comprehend, but your senses cannot deny.
So by avoiding pain, we're unintentionally avoiding the opportunities for the signals that the pain could be giving us for these other amazing things in our lives.
Precisely. Let's contextualize it differently. We celebrate the things that feel good, because in this 21st century, we are an extremely dopaminergic society. Dopamine as the one of the neurohormones of excitement, right? We are being hit by it constantly. So we have become dopamine-seeking life forms. But the fact of the matter is, in embracing those patterns and cementing them, reinforcing them to such degree, is actively neglecting the flip side of the dopamine experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to your emotional and body experience, the physical experience, the somatic experience, my awareness is that there is more richness in embracing the areas of my life that I have not been willing to go into actively or passively, consciously or unconsciously, because they enrich my experience as a human being.
Yeah.
And then they allow me to tap into my true greatness. Let's just talk about really concrete examples, because this is not philosophical topics. There's really practical applications to this. And I brought this thing that I want to bring to the spirit of the conversation, part of the conversation, because it's essential. This is called the communication pyramid, which has been validated in many different studies and so on, where 93% roughly of what we are communicating is being experienced at a physiologic level. The body language, the tone of voice, it's all the product of what's happening inside of you. Well, that leaves us with roughly 7%
For what's actually being said.
what's actually
Wow.
being said, right? Why is that relevant? Because the little that we're saying is a representation of all the stuff, the iceberg that is living within us that we may not have awareness of.
Yeah.
Why is that relevant? Another question of relevancy. Because if my self-talk is one that is toxic and is not really elevating me, it's not that I'm just a negative person. It's that there is what I like to call, there's a POS, which I use in my community. The personal operating system that is running you is essentially producing that 7%, but there's a much bigger body of work that is running within you. And that brings us to this aspect of, where does gratitude come into all of this stuff? Because we've been talking about the feeling aspect of it and how that actually leads to healing and so on. It's not just about acknowledging the great moments in your life. If you're a runner, and I made this run, and it took me 2 hours and 15 minutes, and that was amazing. And now I go to a next ultra marathon, and I did it in 2 hours, and in 4 hours and a half. I suck as a runner, right? Well, hold on. Were you able to run?
Right.
Did you get sick along the way? No. Did you vomit? No. Are you experiencing lactic acidosis that you can't even walk? No. Was your time definitely not to your satisfaction? Yes. Hold on. But why is the gravitational pull towards the fact that I suck as a runner today? This is not psycho talk to try to convince ourselves that I'm okay. It's bringing deep awareness of, what is this life experience I'm having in this moment? And beyond the reflecting on that, what are the feelings that are associated with this moment that I'm feeling as though I suck as a runner? Where do they live in you? Are they in your throat? Are they in your shoulders? What's running those sensations?
Right.
What, if it's embarrassment and you're feeling it in your throat, why are you embarrassed? It just merits the question. Not as a point of trying to dig for answers. Bringing awareness.
Awareness, yeah.
And then the gratitude piece comes in. I have this visual, which I call it the negativity loop. And it would be, I don't have an image for it here today, but it would be something like this. You know, you start spiraling down.
Yeah.
And then you basically end in the drain.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
You do.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the more that you put those kind of thoughts into it without awareness of what's happening in your body, it accelerates like a flywheel the speed at which you're actually going down the drain. So one of the things that I've discovered as part of bringing gratitude becomes a massive wedge that interrupts the negativity pattern, the negativity loop. It's like
Gratitude is a wedge that disrupts the negativity loop.
Precisely.
Love it.
You simply,
It's so true.
and the more gratitude that there is in your experience, the wedge becomes exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
This is not an exaggeration. The people that know me, they'll say yes to this. I can remember when I had my last bad day.
So can I tell you a fun anecdote?
Yeah.
So this morning, I get to drop my kids off at school every morning, and I love it because it forces me to slow down. It forces me to have some gratitude and whatever. And my middle son, he's in preschool, and so the process is I have to walk him into the classroom, and I sign him in, I give him a hug, and we leave. And there's usually quick pleasantries with his teachers and whatever. And they always ask me how I'm doing, and I always respond that I'm great. And that's my genuine response. Every morning I say, I'm great. How are you guys? I always thank them and then I leave. And I've been doing this this is now my 4th year, and I'll do it for 6 with all 3 kids. But today, interestingly enough, I said, how are you guys? And they pointed out the fact that I say great every morning. And they're like, I was like, we're going to put it out there. Like, you guys are going to have a great day today. Like and it was so cool for me because I, I didn't realize, I was never consciously aware that I say great every morning in response to how I'm doing. But it was so cool because it was projecting that gratitude, this thankfulness for the day. I get to take my kids to school. It's amazing. I give them a hug, whatever. And it's always so powerful to me when I get to see other people experiencing benefit from that. And so they said they're going to start saying they're great every morning. And it was just such a cool, like, human moment of like, we're all, at work and doing our thing and whatever, but like the day was elevated for everybody now because we got to have this, like, have a great day. And thank you guys. And that was literally this morning. And it was and what was cool about it is, so one, it made me feel very fulfilled that I got to impact them like that. Great. Right. But then the fact that they acknowledged it to me, that it's been impacting, elevated me, 1,000 times.
Of course.
And it's just cool, like, that shared human experience and how powerful gratitude can be. And especially, like, once we get to share it with one another. So anyway, I'm sorry that I cut you off, but it's so, you were talking about, the last day you've had a bad day. I live by that. I mean, I tell my kids every day, we're going to have great days today, guys. Who's excited to have a great day? Like, we choose it, and it's so cool.
It is really cool. And, I had an experience. I was being mentored by somebody in Europe who does amazing work. And he brought to my attention this book, which I'll share with your audience. And it's called The Magic. The Magic has been one of the most impactful books I've ever read. This book was written by Rhonda Byrne, and Rhonda Byrne was the author who wrote The Secret. And for those who may not resonate with the law of attraction and so on, no need to worry, because this is not being indoctrinated into the law of attraction. But this mentor of mine said, Mario, let's just use this book for the next month and so on. I want you to give it a try and so on. This is some years back. And I said, sure, what is this about? I said, well, it's about gratitude. And I'm like, well, I said to him, Brent, I'm a pretty grateful person. I have an amazing life and I live pretty happy and and so on. So, but sure, I'll give it a try. In all honesty, I was dipping my toes with the book. And one of the things about the book is that it's a 28-day practice, and there's, a reflection for every day for 28 days and some little exercises and so on. And I was really half-ass with the way that I did it, in all honesty. And when I got towards the end of the 28 days in that cycle, as I call them nowadays, I started to see certain things that were happening to me in my life that were, I was kind of like, was this kind of luck or a synchronicity, or what was that all about, right? And I said to myself, I'm going to give this thing a second try, a second run, another cycle, and see what goes on. But
this time with a little more effort.
A little more effort, showing up, to play a bigger game, So let's see how that goes. And so I did that, and I was consequential and definitely compliant with it. And now it's being, Mr. Perfect, and I'm a good student, like I'm going to get the brownie points for doing it every day. But all kidding aside, certain things continue to be happening that were reminiscent of some of the experience that I had 28 days prior or a couple of weeks prior or whatnot. I'm like, okay, this is getting a little weird now. One of the biggest distinctions right away is that in more developed societies, we have adopted the thank yous as a form of politeness.
Right.
But once again, going back to language, it falls short from what's happening truly inside.
Yeah.
I can say thank you to you just to be Mr. Polite. But am I really
7%?
That's 7%, but am I really feeling the gratitude.
Right. And I think coming back to this whole idea of like sensing it or experiencing all of it, one of the things I say at the office all the time is the way we make people feel matters.
For sure.
And I teach the team that for, the body language, the tones of our emails, it's not just the things we're saying, it's the way we're saying it. It's the giving people space and the energy and stuff. But that to your point, like community wise, humanity wise, we know when thank you is a politeness gesture versus a gratitude gesture. Like I think we can feel it.
Yes.
And I think on both ends of the communication channel too, the sender and the receiver.
I agree. And I'm going to take it to a much more elevated level, if I may.
Yeah.
In the business setting, of course, there is a fiduciary relationship to your customers that they're paying for certain services. So whether you have built them or not, or they are the ones building it, there is an expectation somewhere along the way in the transactional nature of the relationship.
Right.
So it is also expected that there is going to be some verbalizing of thank you.
Right.
It's an expectation. But imagine for a second, if everybody who works in your organization was truly,
like genuinely grateful,
living, not from here, embodying, far more stronger term.
Yeah.
Gratitude.
Gosh, it'd be profoundly powerful.
That's what GL28, the 28-day gratitude launchpad is. And this is what has done for organizations that I've worked with. Because the way you do one thing
is the way you do all things.
Everything. If I don't have to think, I'm getting goosebumps. If I don't have to think from here, and my body is living in a state of gratitude, profound gratitude, everything that emanates from my being, my words, my actions, what you feel that I don't even verbalize is aligned.
Do you want to know something interesting? So we texted, you and I, to coordinate this.
Yes.
And at the end of your text messages, you say TY, 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 TY.
Heart and then prayer hands. Every single time.
And I felt it.
Yes.
Gave me the chills just now. But sincerely, I felt it. And it's funny because on paper, a TY text probably is, less than the 7% of, you would think that would be an insincere communication or whatever, but the way, and it's because you did multiple, you've conveyed it sincerely through it, but even that I was felt.
Wow.
And that's fascinating to me because I could tell that it was from embodied, gratitude. Like I could tell, I felt it. And think about how many times people text, thank you or TY, or at the bottom of all my emails, I say thanks, and most of the time that, that's a formality through my email communication, but the TY was felt.
Thank you.
That's fascinating.
I appreciate that. I'm humbled by your recognition of that. The reason why I do 3 thank yous is because there is incredible evidence in how the physical world creates by a factor of 3. So there's a lot of that into that. The second thing is the heart, because I want to be reminded, whether it's an emoji or whatever, to feel. So the heart piece is really, is my way in my thank yous to convey the aspect of it's coming from my whole body is experiencing the thank you. Yeah. And then the prayer hands is nothing religious. It's basically, this is a form of saying thank
gratitude.
you.
Yeah.
It's a sign, it's a gesture of gratitude. Every single communication that I put out, kid you not, has that. When I communicate with anybody inside of my community, in the programs and so on, it has that.
Yeah.
It's just, it really has become a way of being and living from that place. And it really has transformed every single domain of my life. After I went through the second cycle of the magic, today, as we're speaking and having this conversation, I'm on my 45th uninterrupted cycle.
Wow.
And every cycle is 28 days. That's a true claim. my life continues to exponentially change every single day, every single day, every single day.
There's been no point of diminishing return.
No.
Wow.
No. It's impossible to not experience it, because once again, the negativity loop, it gets erased. I can't tell you how many times, in recent months, there have been situations with my wife where there might have been disharmony in our communication. And I'm holding such space within me to feel what is it that I'm feeling, to be able to be a container for her to have her experience independent of me and my actions. And having full embodiment and full experience of what is it that I'm feeling, and embrace it, particularly those that I may conceive or assign these negative labels, to come to a point that they're all in the same level of the spectrum of what are they. There's no positive or negative anymore. It's just the experience of the feeling.
Yeah.
And the deeper my degree of acceptance and vulnerability and surrender to want to experience that, the deeper the love that I get to experience from her as she's witnessing that I am actually not reactive and not trying to defend myself and own my humanity.
Right.
This is not, utopic. This is real practical terms. If I take, for instance, some incredible things have been happening in this current cycle of Yale 28 as I'm running new members in my community. A lot of lessons actually that have been learned there. But one of the things that I have discovered is that healing is a team sport. Healing is a team sport. But we have come to embrace, adopt, believe that you have to go at it alone because it's just the way it should be. Well, healing is not birth. Only one baby can come out of the womb at a time. And it's not death, because you don't need to actually be, you're not dying. Dying would be to actually not embrace the fact that there is support available to you to have your healing experience.
Right.
Whatever that is. Just so you know, this conversation for me that we're having is a healing moment in my life.
Yeah.
Right? Because in being able to be invited and receive such generosity, to have your time, which is invaluable as much as mine, to have a conversation about things that truly matter, to support others in whichever capacity this may resonate with them, for them to tap into other things that are available to them. It's just an incredible gift.
Yeah.
Right. So how could I not be experiencing profound gratitude as I am being allowed to share some thoughts, some perspectives, with you and your audience that you've been fostering and caring for. So when I look at the things that are happening and people that, for example, have, I have a pretty low attrition rate in people that have done my programs. So I want to go and continue, because I continue to talk about what has happened in my life as I have embraced not stopping these practices and living by them. Something fascinating is that you may have somebody who's done maybe 2 cycles of GL28, the 28-day gratitude launchpad, and then suddenly somebody says today, oh my gosh, they may be crying, in their share, because one of the things that I learned, and I'll share with your community for those entrepreneurs who are interested in experiential offerings, not just in the healthcare space, for any kind, whether you're selling real estate or, you're a content creator or so on. A tremendous amount of fear entered humanity upon the considering that social media has disrupted the possibility of experiencing privacy. And as I contemplated that, and I've experienced that because I'm not somebody who would gravitate towards using Facebook and some of the other players, then I started to consider, is that really true? Right? Because something is evident. I can have thousands of people in one call from all over the world using Zoom, but I may not be able to congregate them all at once in a convention center in San Diego to talk about healing the way it used to be prior to COVID.
Right.
right? So if you feel so compelled to share what you've been given in terms of your awareness to support people's lives and make them better if they resonate with your message, well, it's my responsibility to figure out, is there anything that I can leverage with the present technology to create true safe containers
Right.
where people can come to heal and experience that degree of safety.
To build a community.
To build a community. So when I started this journey with a life partner in particular, we went through some platforms such as Voxer, names that you'll know right away. Then it became pretty obvious that the limitations of the platform were not really serving the experience. And I said, okay, let's go into WhatsApp. And then when we transitioned to WhatsApp, I had this awareness and I said, there's something that I talk about in my community, which I call it IHV, which stands for the invisible human virus.
Mm.
The invisible human virus is when people don't feel seen in the world, in their lives, it can really create a lot of disharmony and you get sick. And there's a lot of people that get depressed. They have chronic conditions, autoimmune illnesses, cancer, and so on. So I said, what if we could actually create an experience where we could leverage, your phone, and you could create videos, whether it's live or recordings, and you could actually upload those videos as part of your daily prompts, what I call quick bites. I don't believe in forcing anything. The quick bites are quick invitations or quick invites as part of the prompts that I give in my programs, especially in Yale 28. And I started to incorporate the aspect of recording yourself to be able to speak about the prompt of that day and let yourself be seen. Many people were really reluctant to do that. But then there's always somebody that has the courage to, I'm going to give that a try and see what happens. And then that automatically gives permission to others in their own right to do the same. And that creates this incredible, synergistic, ever accelerating level of participation and momentum.
Yeah.
So I started to actually, I had that idea that came through and I started to implement that. And then suddenly the videos were going from like 30 seconds to like 10 minutes long. And people are like, what's happening is it's just unbelievable to see the transformation, the healing, and all of the things that are happening in front of your eyes because somebody's sharing it. And then WhatsApp became too limited again. And then as we continued to grow, then we went to Facebook groups. But then people have tremendous, guttural reactions to Facebook, and I don't want to be there. Right. So I had, for example, one of the cycles recently was 200 people from all over the world. And people started to reach out to my team saying, I hate Facebook, like they were really, not happy about it. And there were about, 73, 74 people out of the 200 people that did not want to do Facebook. So now we found ourselves in this situation of, well, we promised that we would do this and we have to deliver on our promise. So let's just kind of recreate the program and we'll be emailing all of these people that don't want to be in Facebook, and we'll still cater to the people that are in the Facebook group, a private group, mind you. And then we were surveying our community to really get real-time feedback as to what the experience was and so on. And then it became very obvious to us that we needed to migrate the community and build it elsewhere where we didn't have this social media patina attached to it. Right. So we went into what's called Circle. You probably are acquainted with that. And created the Alive Partner community, what's called the Alive Community Membership inside of Circle. And we started actually April 1st, so not a couple of, not even 2 weeks now. And started to have that experience in there because once again, like I said, the healing experience is not meant to be something that you do alone. Yeah. It's not something that is meant to be a lonely journey. And I am a firm believer, given the fact that I am technology inclined, that as healthpreneurs and people in this kind of space, it is our responsibility to be curators of the most sacred, pure, healthy experience for others to really come to receive and experience what they intended to, and then some. Yeah. And so it's been a tremendous, it's a value inside of, one of our core values in our organization to really be conservators of such experiences. And I like to say that we are not in the business of selling courses and books and whatever, but in the business of being creators of human experiences. Yeah. Where people come to really become alive, where they really independent of me, because there's no light rays coming out of my hands last time I checked. So it's not about me.
No magic wand.
There's no magic wands. I use the term, but last time I knew I haven't been able to kind of like cook the chicken, and the steak with my hands. But I am deeply aware that it's an honor and it's a huge privilege to be able to be co-creating experiences with other human beings who come to trust you, and that's a huge privilege that has to be honored and respected profoundly on a daily basis. When I open the microphone, when I have my what I call the healing seat calls as opposed to the hot seat.
Right.
People come out. We've coined that term that I came up with, the healing seat or the heal seat, to have people come in and really open up about the things that are coming up in their experience and to be held in that space. And it's really interesting because a lot of the people that have come to the community and say, well, this program GL28 about gratitude, I've done gratitude. And so when I've read the book and so on, I said, well, first of all, the book was just a source of inspiration many, 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 many months back for me to really connect these dots of the gratitude plus feeling equals healing. So I am massively grateful for the awareness that this book brought into my life. But I can't disregard, more than 3 decades of being a physician and having witnessed and being on the giving end and receiving end through my patients of many things that I cannot explain through a book.
How truly powerful it is.
And that, there's no way that money can't buy that. I don't know that's beyond, it's beyond a privilege, Ben. And then the bigger privilege, the meta level of that privilege is if you have certain awareness of things that you have been gifted with, whether, somebody passed them on to you through sharing or mentoring you, educating you, or family, whatever the case may be. But you come to a point in your trajectory where you have this awareness, that when you pair that up with gratitude and you pair that up with what you are feeling, it leads you to a point where there is tremendous alignment with your life purpose, with living in your greatness.
Yep.
And the interesting thing is that, funny playing words, but it inverts the aspect of chasing the greatness.
Yeah, you're attracting it.
And now greatness is chasing you.
Yes.
Because you come to a very humble realization that greatness is sourced through you.
It's in you. Yes. Have you seen the Nike commercial that greatness is in you?
I don't think so.
I'll send it to you after this. One of the things I love high quality commercial, like creative commercial, powerful commercial messaging. And Nike has this amazing one, and there's no sound, there's no music, just footsteps. And it's an overweight young kid running down the road. And they played it before the Olympics, and it's so powerful because it's silent and it's very minimal. It's one shot running, and he's getting closer and closer to the camera, and it has a monologue about what greatness is and that greatness is in you. And like, we're all great. And I'll send it to you after. It's to this day my favorite commercial of all time for a multitude of reasons. The messaging for one, the production, the style. There's many reasons for it, but greatness is in us.
Yeah. Yeah. And the moment that there is a full body experience of that knowing, then the chase is over.
Right.
And then true living begins.
Right. And a rich life begins.
Yeah. So I think that to your podcast's title, there is a lot of value in having a lot of guests to come and speak about different things just to reinforce the obvious.
Right.
Which is stop chasing it because you're standing, you're it.
You're in it. Yeah. You are it.
You are it.
Yeah.
And that is a really profound realization when that happens. We are, in developed nations, if you take the great 7 nations, right, the G7, there has been such a paradigm shift as to what really matters. And a lot of it has been chasing the financial gains of whatever it is that you do, whether it's by virtue of your education and then having X professional endeavor and so on. But the more I come to realize that all of those things that have been achieved by others and those who chase it to achieve it, it didn't come from chasing them,
Yeah.
but from embodying what their purpose and calling was, whether they knew it at the time or didn't know it at the time, but they still followed it.
Right.
Then that has become the source of the chasing for many. But they're chasing something that was not chased initially.
Right.
And there's an amazing, amazing book that really changed my life some years back. It's called The Surrender Experiment. And it's amazing because the guy who wrote this book is the founder of the company Medscape. And this is somebody who had no interest in basically becoming a multi-billionaire. Michael Singer is the name of the author. And he speaks in the book about the more these things came, the more he wanted to let them go. And the more they kept him coming, the more he wanted to let them go. And it's fascinating because for me, I've had the opportunity to traditionally have these achievements, right? And the diplomas on the wall and so on. But the more I have struggled with letting all those pieces fall away, just like when you ask me, like, how do I introduce you? Just say Mario, right? I'm human before I'm anything else. I struggled with that for a long time because I was so identified with the figure of who I was, the physician. And I'll share with the audience in complete honesty and transparency. I remember the first time that I stepped away from medicine was in 2013, and I did that to start multiple business ventures at the time. And so I consider myself that I had retired from medicine as I knew it.
Right.
And I remember the first 2 weeks after, quote unquote, leaving that world, I was in such a high. Like, this is amazing, right? Like, I'm vacationing.
The world is my oyster.
Yeah. The world is my oyster. I'm vacationing. It's great. And then around, I don't know, the Monday or the Tuesday of the third week, when the allure of the vacation was kind of like wearing off, right? And now what? And there's no nurses around me, and there's no techs around me, and I'm not in an operating room, and yes, doctor, and whatever doctor, and do this and do that, and bring the next patient and this and that. There's none of that. And I'm just like, at that point, a pretty newly minted dad, changing diapers and cooking and, and watching TV here and there and doing other things. And I'm like, what have I done? It was really like a depressing state, that's probably the first time that I felt that, and second to that probably would be the Vipassana experience,
right.
Because I don't really gravitate. That's not typically how I experience life. It was awful. And it was a lot of it because of the attachment to the image of this is what I am. And one of the most damaging words when living unconsciously is I am X. I am a business owner. I'm a doctor. I'm a nurse. I'm a writer. We box ourselves in.
Right.
And then we limit all the potential that is in the field of possibilities.
Yeah, which is limitless.
Which is limitless surrounding you.
Yeah.
Right? So all of the things really have intertwined in incredible, powerful ways, and essentially ultimately gave birth to the Alive Partner community. It's really interesting. People would ask me, because I had done a lot of it in the mind-body medicine space, and I mentioned the business of Thrive Doctors that I used to do with my wife going back to 2012, 2013. And then she would invite me and some other people to be a guest speaker in some different functions and so on. And people would ask me, well, when are you going to start talking about this for men? And so on. And the truth is, I wasn't ready. I was still, in my own cocoon, in my own metamorphosis. And I didn't feel honesty would have been shining through if I would have been telling people to be X or Y when I was not really walking the talk.
Right.
And as you know, in the business world, if your messaging is not aligned with what's truly being experienced by the founder, you may actually transiently be quote unquote successful, but it's not going to be enduring.
Right.
Because the element within us that feels the weirdness or the BS meter kicks in at some point, and you're like, oh, I don't know, I don't trust it. I don't know what it is, but I don't know, something is off, right? So we say something is off, and to me that was really important. If I'm not really aligned with what my message is and really walking it and doing it, then I'd rather not touch it, because there's many ways to experience abundance and greatness, that are truly fed by authenticity.
Yeah.
And if that's not really an operating principle, then you're not going to experience success and greatness.
Right.
You know,
I'm glad that you've done it. And I want to thank you, because this has been a profoundly powerful, well, anyway, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I want to thank you. Oh, I want to thank you for multiple reasons. One is I want to thank you for your time, because that, as you mentioned, is invaluable. And, taking time out of your day to come and sit and share time with me and share your message with the audience has been amazing. But I want to thank you bigger than that. Like the approach that you've taken with a live partner, and the thoroughness with which that, you've built the community and the organization, and the authenticity that it's built on, and even waiting until you are ready. I mean, all of these things that, have come together, and then the gratitude and, your vulnerability and your willingness to express it, to the extent that I even felt it through a text and all of that stuff. It's refreshing. That's the best word for it at this stage. But anyway, all of that to say, Dr. Mario, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I have one small gift for you before we wrap. But
nice.
These are my Inspire by Example shirts. And I just want to give you one because
thank you.
You genuinely are inspiring by example.
Thank you.
Just by living your life and putting TY, TY, TY at the end of your text messages, and for the good you're putting out in the world. We need more of it, and it's inspiring, and I appreciate the heck out of it. So thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been truly an honor and a privilege to invest time in this way, and beyond that, to really be in the receiving of so much generosity. And I think that that's something that we overlook sometimes. Just because you may have something to say, well, people should open the doors for me to have a microphone in front of me and do so. And it's not true. It's not true. There is a lot of greatness in the planet. There is a lot of incredible human beings. So the honor is completely mine, and I feel tremendously privileged. And thank you for allowing me to share some perspectives for whatever it may serve people in your audience, and continue doing great work and chasing greatness for others to realize.
I'm going to have to rename the show now.
No, it's perfect, so that they continue to have examples that is within them, and that's just super powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you. Thank you.